Hello, everyone. I apologize in advance. I have to do this on my phone because my computer camera wasn't working. As usual, you know how technology goes. And I'm supposed to be wearing a Slayer shirt. That Slayer shirt is currently still in the wash, so I can't be wearing it. But just imagine I'm wearing one. It'll make a few parts make a little bit more sense. You're going to be like, what is he talking about? Why is he talking about this? But I'm supposed to be wearing a Slayer shirt. So just bear with me. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me hear them in the comments. I know I have things I need to work on. But let's do this. Let's give it our best shot. So, all right. Slayer! I know what you're thinking. Why is this guy randomly yelling Slayer at us? Well, this is actually just basic rock concert etiquette. If you go to a rock concert, it's not uncommon or rude to see someone wearing a Slayer shirt and then to greet them by throwing out the Rock On sign and then by loudly yelling, Slayer! And almost every time you'll be re-greeted by that same greeting, and everyone else around you will do it too. A rock concert can seem like a strange and crazy place for someone who's never been to one. If you went to your first show, you might see things like people running in a circle, or what looks like people beating the crap out of each other, or maybe people sitting down and rowing an imaginary boat. It's things like this that make a rock concert so mysterious and strange compared to other genres. That's how it was for me. I went to my first concert in the 8th grade. And man, I was unprepared. The only tip I was given when I went to my show was avoid the mosh pits. People die in those things all the time, which turned out aren't even true. I spent the whole time doing my best to avoid the mosh pits, the crowd surfs, really anybody, just trying to enjoy the music because I was so afraid to get hurt or not enjoy it. I just was unprepared. That's the simplest way of putting it. But since then, I've become a true concert veteran. I've been to hundreds of concerts and I've seen thousands of bands. And along the way, I've developed tips, tricks, and rules that I use to help me better enjoy the rock concert I go to. And I have since then also shared these tips, tricks, and rules with others that are their first shows, other shows, and have helped them better enjoy the shows too. And that's what I'm doing today. Because you never know when you're going to go to your first rock concert, and I want to help all of you be as prepared as possible for your first. And even if it's not your first and you're a true concert veteran like I am, then these tips and tricks will still help you better enhance your experience. Today we're going to really go over two main parts of a concert, and those two main parts we're going to talk about today is the audience and the different kinds of participation you might see in the audience. And going over these two things will best help prepare you for your first show. So, audience. Concerts are held in all sorts of different types of venues across the world. The main venue here in the United States of America in today's day and age is a large room. Usually, the popularity of the band determines the size of the room, so the more popular the band, the larger the room. Regardless of how big the room is or how big the crowd is, the crowd can be broken up into three main sections. And these three main sections are very different, and the different sections have different things happen in these sections. That's why it's important to kind of go over these sections. And these sections can be compared to a piece of pizza. The piece of pizza has three main parts, and so does this crowd. So starting in the back of the crowd is what we like to call the tip of the pizza or the first bite. The middle of the crowd is going to be called the toppings and the middle area of the pizza. And the third area is called the crust, the area closest to the front. So starting with the tip or the first bite, this section of the crowd is the most relaxed. This is the section of the crowd where people just go to watch the show, just to enjoy the show and just have a good time, really. Like, they don't want to participate, they're just going to sit there and watch. In this section, you'll also find things such as the merch table, the concession stands, and the bathrooms. So if you're looking just to go to enjoy the show, not really participate, this might be the section for you. Now, the middle of the crowd, or the toppings with pizza area of the crowd, is the craziest, most unpredictable area of the crowd. It is the largest section, has the most people, and just like how the toppings are sprinkled across a slice of pizza randomly, that's how it is with the mosh pits and the topping and the crowd surfing that randomly appears in this section. Now, the third area is called the crust. I call this area the crust because there's not a lot of movement in this area, and once spots have been picked, there's not a whole lot to do about it. The main purpose of this section is to get a spot as close to the front as possible and to hold that spot as long as possible. So usually if you're not in this spot right at the beginning of the show, the likelihood of you getting into one of these spots just isn't very likely, to be honest. But this section is great if you're trying to get good pictures and videos. It's great for interaction with the band, as well as if you're lucky at the end of the show, you might be lucky enough to catch one of those coveted guitar picks or drumsticks that a band throws out at the end of their set. Now, regardless of what section you're in, all of it is fun. All of the sections have their ups and downs, and it's more important just to pick an area that best fits you. Now, maybe you like 2 of the sections, or you want to try a few of them, That's totally fine. There's no rule that says you can't enjoy multiple sections of the audience, just as there's no rule you can't enjoy a whole slice of pizza. So go experiment, try to find what fits you best, but at least now you know before you run into it, thinking that this section is going to be good for you before you really know what's going to happen. Now, regardless of what section you're in, there are 2 main forms of audience participation you'll see at shows, and that is crowd surfing and mosh pits. Regardless of what section you're in and what level of audience participation there is in these sections, the likelihood of you seeing these things or maybe having to be a part of it is pretty likely. You'll never know when a crowd surfer is going to come overhead or when a mosh pit's going to open up. So we'll start with crowd surfing. Crowd surfing is pretty self-explanatory. It is when the audience members lift someone up and they ride the front of on top of the audience to the front of the crowd like a surfer riding a wave. Once they get to the front of the audience, the security guard will help them over the barricade or just off of the crowd, and then you are free to move your way back around the barricade and back into the audience to your spot. A few main rules to remember while crowd surfing is don't flail your limbs while you're crowd surfing. Nobody likes that. It's called crowd killing when you're punching and kicking while you're crowd surfing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's how people get hurt. That's how people get injured. Another thing to remember is that remember what you're doing. So if you have valuables on you, leave them with someone else you came with. Or if you came with yourself, make sure they're secure in your pockets and you won't lose them. If you didn't come with someone and you don't have a way to secure them, maybe this activity just isn't for you. Also, while you're crowd surfing, and even as someone who isn't crowd surfing and you might just be helping someone up, pay attention, because you never know when someone's going to come crashing down on top of you, and you never know if you are going to go crashing to the floor as a crowd surfer. Usually you can trust people, but every now and then things do happen. So be prepared, be attentive. This activity is not very common in the first bite area, but it is very common in the toppings and the crust area. Usually the closer to the front you are, the more of this you'll experience. Now, moving on to mosh pits, they seem like they're a lot more complex, but they really aren't. The basic concept of a mosh pit is it's a circle where people push each other around to the music. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines it as to engage in uninhibited, often frenzied activities such as intentional collision with others near the stage at a rock concert. Mosh pits are most often found in the toppings area, but again, you never know when one could break out in the crust or the first bite area. They could really break out anywhere. Now, a mosh pit might seem like a chaotic place or that it's kind of a free-for-all, but it really isn't. There are rules and unspoken rules to a mosh pit. They might not be posted, but it is important before you go to know some of these rules. So here's some of the rules that I follow while in the pit. If someone falls down, pick them up. If someone stops to tie a shoelace, stop, form a circle around them and protect them so no one bumps into them, no one trips over them, all of that good stuff. And don't crowd kill those in or around the pit, as well as don't be the tough guy, everyone is there to have fun. ABC News released some tips and suggested, while the aim of a mosh pit is to bump and push each other, you should never try to intentionally hurt anyone. Treat everyone with respect and stay hydrated, but never bring a water container into the pit. Kerrang! Magazine, which is one of the leading music magazines in the rock music scene, suggested, don't whine, hold lost items above your head, don't shove someone into the pit who doesn't want to, no punching, choking, or fighting in general. These general rules can apply to almost any mosh pit. That being said, when you go to a different genre, you might see a little bit difference in the pit. For example, if you go to a hardcore show, their pits tend to be a lot more violent and involve things called punch dancing. It's a lot more violent, let's just put it like that. And then there's ska shows where there's a form of moshing called skanking, which is a lot more dance-oriented and is a lot more fun-centered. And so really, it's important to know what kind of pit you're getting into, but like I said, these rules will work for most pits. Other things you'll see in mosh pits are things called a circle pit, which is when everyone runs in a circle and bumps into each other, and a wall of death, which is when the crowd splits as if going to war, and when the beat drops in a song, or when the singer says to, they run at each other as if going to war, and it turns into a giant mosh pit. While these things may look different, the rules still apply from a general mosh pit to this. There are other things you might see at a show, such as the row, the crawl of life, or even maybe crowd surfing, a crowd surfer. These things are uncommon but still happen. Just follow the general rules to moshing and crowd surfing and you will be fine, the participants will be fine, and everyone will leave happy. Every section is fun and has its ups and downs, like we've mentioned, and every activity is fun. But what's most important when you go to a show is to have fun. No matter what section you think you belong in or what activity you're doing, just have fun. Don't worry about everyone else. Don't worry about what blah blah is doing next year or what so and so over here is doing. Just go and have fun. Find the section that best fits you, find the activities that best fit you, and enjoy it. Experiment, find where you belong, and have a good time. Because that's what's so great about a rock concert. Once you enter the venue, you're a part of something bigger, and that's the rock family, and there is a spot for everyone. Hopefully these tips, tricks, and rules will help you when you go to your first rock concert. I believe all of you are ready to enjoy your first show. So, now, moving forward, let's end this the way we started. Everybody, stand up, and you're at your first show and you see someone wearing a Slayer shirt. Throw up the horns, let's hear your best Slayer. 1, 2, 3, Slayer! Well, I apologize for that. That kind of threw me off. I was using an online timer to watch my time, and I was not ready for that to actually make an alarm noise. So I apologize that's why I was a little thrown off at the end. I hope you enjoyed my speech, and yeah, just let me have it. Let me hear what you got. I'm ready to hear your tips, and I apologize for the end of that. That was bad. But thank you for watching, and good luck.